In this episode of IT SPARC Cast, AT&T suddenly doesn't like subscriptions, fired Disney employee serves up wingdings with a side of allergens, and Supermicro cooks the books. Welcome to IT SPARC Cast. I'm your host, John Barker.
And I'm your host, Lou Schmidt.
It's Friday, November 1st. Cybersecurity month is over. Back to sending out email passwords via plain text.
Every month is Cybersecurity Month, John.
True dat. IT SPARC Cast is a digest of the news from the enterprise IT world over the last week with insights, opinions, and a little sarcasm from two experts, each with over 20 years experience working in IT or for IT vendors. And now for the news bites.
Well, it might be a little more than a little bit of, of sarcasm. Anyway, here's something we've been tracking for a long time, and we're going to go into a deeper dive on. Return to office and remote work. This comes to us via the LA Times and Slashdot. And what it but in our modern world, links to Yahoo. So you'll see all the links in the notes. But what we're seeing now is 80% of the organizations have a return to office program in place, but almost none of them are enforcing it. Because if you start to enforce it, you put a filter in place that will get rid of the top and the bottom of your organization, which is probably not the best way to do this. So according to the article, reluctant to clamp down on the flexibility of employees, only 17% of these organizations are actively enforcing their policies. Now, I have a question. What does this active enforcement consist of?
Yeah, so in this article, Lou, are they saying that it's the organizations that aren't enforcing it, or is it the frontline managers that aren't enforcing it?
There's some level of confusion here, right?
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling this is more falling on the frontline managers than it is on the organization. Because as we've discussed in the past, frontline managers don't want RTO either,
right?
Nor do the VPs. So some of the things we've talked about, it's like, okay, are you badging in? Is your computer showing up on the local network? Are we seeing your login? Now, John and I both know ways to spoof this. It can be done.
Sure.
So the question is, this is a cat and mouse game right now where they're trying to change behavior, and they're using this as what I call remote layoff strategy. It's always easier to lay off somebody you don't see in the office every day. And I myself have personally seen this as a middle manager at a company watching the layoff process go through when there was a downturn. So in a way, there actually seems to be asking you to self-select. And then the frontline managers, to your point, are saying, we don't want to do this. I mean, what else could it be?
Yeah, so that's interesting. And I think that, we had a term that really became popular as the pandemic hit, which was quiet quitting. And I think this is kind of quiet covering. And the managers at frontline up to VP realize that this is a bad policy. And so that they're covering. Now, the problem is that if the top level execs really want this return to office, they can start putting in more intrusive systems. They can track where your laptop is, both by what it's connected to and geographically. They can do all kinds of things. And like Lou said, Lou and I could probably get around that. Most of you listening could, but most employees couldn't. It'll be really interesting to see where this goes. And again, Lou and I have not made any bones about it that we think that return to office is a bad policy. I just made a comment on LinkedIn the other day about this and that, Andy Jassy needs to read this article. It was about how return to office is actually causing more problems than it's solving.
But so at the same time, we're not advocating you never go into the office. There's 100%. Going to be time. Yeah, there's going to be times we're pulling together a meeting of the local team. I think what's as important as sharing a space occasionally with these folks is to go and do a team building event, usually a meal. Breaking bread together is a very human thing. going in a meal and relaxing and getting to know the folks a little bit more. I really look forward to those. John and I have both participated in mobile teams together. If we get together like once a quarter and do that, we found it had a really positive impact on teams. But the concept that you have to be in the office drives an under the lash type mentality.
Yeah, 5 days a week is almost never required. I mean, there are going to be cases, you can't put together widgets from home sometimes, but
absolutely.
But as an information worker, 5 days a week just seems over the top.
So basically, to close this one out, 37% of employees show up 1 or 2 days a week, yet only 17% of employers are dissatisfied with that attendance. So there's obviously a huge mismatch. We're going to be going through a lot of this. Let's talk about something else that's virtual.
Yeah. So according to 2 different articles from the Register and Tech Target, there is a current lawsuit going on between AT&T and Broadcom over VMware support costs that have gone up dramatically. So they have been in negotiations to try to get a settlement going. And this revolves again around VMware's support services, which AT&T is saying has gone up 1,000%. So that's a pretty significant increase as they move from to a subscription model. Now, I made a joke at the beginning about AT&T suddenly not liking subscriptions, which is a little bit ironic. But AT&T is claiming that they had a pre-existing contract with VMware for 2 more years of support, which allegedly Broadcom is ignoring after the acquisition of VMware. What Broadcom is claiming is that option is no longer available, so that's why they're not honoring it. And
this is tort law, my friend.
Contract
law is really well sorted.
And just to flip the script a little bit here, T-Mobile's in an interesting situation because several years ago they offered your price will never increase promise, and they have just since broken that. And now there's lawsuits going on there. But what's interesting is that there was a court case in front of the New York Supreme Court on October 22nd, and the Supreme Court judge gave AT&T Broadcom 30 days to fix this on their own. Go fix this on yourself. Don't bring it to daddy to fix it for you. But did issue a temporary restraining order requiring Broadcom to continue the VMware support for AT&T during the negotiation period. Now, I don't know where this is going to end up. I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago, and I'll put a link to that right above Lou, where Broadcom's acquisition of VMware is about a revenue farm. They are just trying to turn out as much cash as possible, and they see many ways where they felt that VMware was not extracting enough revenue from its customers, and that's what they're going to do. Even if it drives some away, many will stay, and they're going to continue to make a lot more money.
And to that point, Ars Technica via Slashdot had an article, I believe, that came out today discussing the fact that many customers, they're seeing across the board pretty much 3 times the prices.
Yeah.
So there's so if you're not on the VMware, if you're not so big that moving to a new system would be a major cost in itself, whereas you can absorb the VMware cost increases and hopefully get better attention paid to your particular use case, you're looking at Nutanix, OpenNebula, OpenStack, stuff like that. It is definitely time to be looking. The folks who are in the information technology area, need to be getting acquainted with other virtualization technologies.
I totally agree. And I think that it's just your duty as an IT admin or a CIO or whatever your role might be to make sure that you're doing your due diligence to make sure that you're getting the best price possible. And as we all know, we talk about this almost every week. IT budgets are not, inflating dramatically. So this is a cost that a lot of them just can't absorb.
Yeah, it leads to some really, really bad choices having to be made on top of all the stuff we see going on in security and AI space. There's a lot of different directions your funding is being pulled, and costs aren't going down for anybody. So this is truly, it's a really good idea to explore alternatives with providers that care about what you think.
So moving from one lawsuit to another, what's going on with Delta?
Oh, good Lord. We all saw this coming, but CrowdStrike is now the target of a lawsuit by Delta. Delta Airlines was a heavy user of both CrowdStrike and Microsoft Windows for its display and infrastructure stuff. So when the bad update was pushed out and didn't go through a canary release to find out if it was actually going to impact adversely, would be the lovely term for this, it really, really did a number on Delta's operations. And unfortunately, in the case of air transport operations, I've been involved with this at an earlier stage in my career. I used to fix air traffic control systems in the Air Force, and I am very familiar with what the multidimensional scheduling of moving aircraft looks like, and even more how complicated it gets when you talk about the logistics of fueling and providing and offloading waste and moving cargo all at the same time. It is a supercomputer class problem. It's a really, really big problem. So when the CrowdStrike, unfortunately, they didn't do this maliciously, but they certainly threw a major monkey wrench into this. It's interesting that this lawsuit does not apparently contain any reference to the fact that Microsoft was giving unchecked access with no guidelines to kernel level execution. We have certainly explored that in the past as well. But this is going to be, it cost, according to this, it was like a
$500 million.
$500 million, impacted 1.3 million passengers. And as you know, in the air travel system, this stuff ripples. So even if you weren't flying on Delta, you were impacted by this. It impacted everything. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this works. What type, once again, we talked about this stuff never becoming cheaper. CrowdStrike is obviously going to have to put some sort of insurance policy into place to prevent this sort of thing from happening again on an operational level. This has the potential to really do some damage. And obviously, it's going to get hashed out in the courts. But this was the other shoe we were waiting to see drop.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things about this that that CrowdStrike is saying in rebuttal is that they offered to help Delta. This is their claim, and that Delta refused their help. And if that's the case, then that could end up throwing a bit of a monkey wrench into the lawsuit. We'll see. But
if somebody takes down your network and then offers to come look at it, do you allow them to do that?
I know. We'll just have to see how that goes out. But we'll be following this. We'll
report out what happened. It is incredibly interesting because this, unfortunately, because they didn't canary their code, do small releases to see, this is now a canary legal case.
Right.
Now,
right.
Speaking of legal cases.
Yeah. So not so much a legal case, but an interesting financial report. So according to CNBC, Ernst Young has resigned as Supermicro's auditor. Now, Supermicro is the server manufacturer, and E&Y resigned last week after raising significant concerns over the company's internal controls, board independence, and accounting practices. E&Y said that its resignation letter that it was unwilling to be associated with the management's financial statements. That's pretty damning. And then because of that, Supermicro has been hit with a short sell, and their shares have plunged 33% as part of this. They've also delayed their financial statements for the year and are reportedly under federal investigation. Not good.
This really sucks because they're a major and excellent provider of hardware.
Yeah.
I will say on a personal level, I've been out to Supermicro. I've worked with them. I've had friends who worked with them. They definitely have a very top-down, performance-oriented culture. It's a bit of a pressure cooker in there.
Yeah.
So I can see how something like this could happen. but it doesn't make me happy. This is an American success story company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you on that. And they actually have weathered some storms recently. We talked during the prep about the Bloomberg article that made some false claims about Supermicro, which I won't repeat what the claims were just because I don't want to be spreading that kind of information.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you. Unfortunately, though, this does look bad for the leadership there, and the reason that we're talking about it is not just to rag on Supermicro, but if you're a customer of Supermicro, then you should be aware of this so that at the very least use it as a negotiation tactic when you're getting your next pricing. You just state that you're concerned about the company's future, so you want better pricing, or be aware, maybe start looking around and be prepared in case something bad happens, that you have a backup plan.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. But it is very much a sad thing, in my opinion. And here we go. Do you want to? How secure are we feeling?
Yeah, let's talk about ideology, and when it comes to large language models.
So I came across this through Twitter. Elon Musk posted it. Came across from Pedro Domingos, and this is a research paper coming out from university, and there's a link that'll be included in the show notes right here that talks about the fact that researchers are starting to find that large language models will reflect the ideology of their trainers. Now, you think this would be sort of a no kidding aspect of this type of thing, but one of the things that we've been talking about a lot internally is, where is the data that's training this model coming from? And how can you determine what the bias of the data is? And it doesn't matter what you're doing, really, unless you're doing pure science where you're feeding it nothing but incremental input mathematical data, there is bias, right? And you need to work with that bias to get the answers you're looking for, to try to get to the truth. So what these researchers have found in this paper is that they compared Western models versus Chinese models. There's certainly a very big philosophical gap on some of the methodologies you use to solve problems, and also some of the worldviews where you start to go. And they're finding it reflected in the models. Now, here in the United States, we're in the middle of a very big election season that everybody's watching, right? And we have seen cases of confirmed news sources doing things that are not very confirmed, not really great. So one of the and this is across the spectrum. I'm not ratting on any. It's all over the place, right? Everybody wants to win. Everybody wants their team to win. But the thing you probably need to start thinking about is how you're going to vet the integrity of the information that's going into this.
Yeah, that's a great point, Lou. And bias can be political. It can be scientific.
Mm-hmm.
It can be all kinds of different things that you want to be aware of. And that bias, especially with something like an LLM, can be, even if you agree with the bias, it can be a bad thing, and that you're not getting the raw information from the tool that you're looking for. And I think that's what we need to be concerned about. And that's, again, true whether it's politically, scientifically, mathematically, whatever it is that however you feel historically, there are biases out there that again, based on the data that is being served up and trained, those LLMs are being trained on, can really have an impact. And that's something to be aware of.
And the engineers who are programming this may not necessarily cognitively in front of them know that they're putting bias in there. Unconscious bias is a big thing.
100%. And, we all have it. And, I have my own biases, and there's things that I just, figure are true, which may or may not be true. That's just the nature of being a human. But that comes out in anything you train. I'm sure my kids are picking up biases from me that, that may or may not be a good thing. And think of it this way: as an LLM is effectively starting out as a child that you're teaching. It's going to pick those up. So just be aware.
I know. I taught my kid to be a skeptic. I'm really proud when he questions me.
Good deal.
I really am.
Good deal.
Speaking of things that happened a while ago. Would you like to discuss security?
Sure. So it's time for the CVE of the week.
Speaking of CVE and the term CVE, congratulations. The CVE folks, the facility that maintains it, has turned 25. CVE was originally formed by MITRE. It was formed as sort of a quasi governmental and private fusion, and it has been incredibly successful. This is a really great example of industry and government and research working together to try to take a large resource and make it safe. Now, is it safe? Right. There's a big attack surface there, but at least we have a fighting chance. And they realized that 25 years ago. So when we talk about all this stuff, doom and gloom, we're all in the thing. Government did this billionaire did that. Stop and take a look back. 25 years of CVE.
You want to feel old? That's that.
Shut up.
That'll do
I'm
it
not
right
old.
there.
I'm not old. I'm just
in honor of CVE's birthday. We're going to give him a break. And today's CVE of week is not actually a CVE. We're going to talk about looking internal when it comes to security and how CISOs need to really pay attention to that. So we have an article from the Register where a fired Disney staffer is being accused of hacking the dinner menus or the meal menus in the parks to add profanity, wingdings, and remove allergen info. So this is not good. It's parts of this sound funny, but there's parts that are really serious. So a Disney employee was arrested after allegedly hacking the Disney menu systems for the parks. This involved changing fonts to wingdings. What he actually did is he renamed the font, the wingding font file, made copies of it and renamed it. So no matter what font you changed the menus to, it was always wingdings. So now the menus are completely unreadable. That sounds like a funny thing, and be that as it may.
It kind of is.
Yeah, but it is also can materially impact the company, and so therefore it would be it's something of concern. But what he also did was remove allergen information. And as most of us know, people with significant allergies to food of various types, that's not good. So that's a very significant safety risk. He also allegedly redirected QR codes on the menus to websites with political messages. Again, that could be considered funny, but not funny to Disney. He also conducted a denial of service attack on former colleagues and was linked to an intrusion via VPN and virtual machines. So what this seems is that it's not clear to me whether that he was using his own credentials or using some sort of shared credentials in order to accomplish this. And I will say that the FBI has currently charged him under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. So again, not to make light of anybody losing their job. Most of us have been in a case where that's impacted us or people that we know. So we're not trying to make light of that. But what is the proper time? And actually, I'm going to ask you for feedback on this, feedback at itsparkcast.com. What's your take on what is the appropriate time to cut off access? Is it during the meeting with HR where you find out that you've lost your job? Is it a day later? Or is it somewhere in between? And this is what I would like to see us talk about is maybe I can retain my email access, but nothing else. Now, that's probably going to require more work on the preparatory side to make sure that we have the ability to say, I don't have access to this server. I don't have access to this system. And, oh, by the way, I need to know all the systems that this person had access to, which I may or may not as the IT team. How do we control this?
This is a really huge problem. And I'm reflecting back on the first and last time I was laid off, which was, well, I can't comment on it, but I wasn't specifically put out about it. But the problem is I was given 6 hours, 9 hours to sort of close things up, which I think was pretty cool because I wanted to send a parting email to my colleagues. I wanted to jump on a few meetings, let them know I had equipment resources I wanted distributed properly, which means people had to know that it existed and they needed to know how to get to it, which I was able to do, and I was very grateful for that. But there was a lot of infrastructure, say virtual machines in a lab environment, I didn't have time to get to. And because and to me, that's like crap, I couldn't do that, right? But what if there had been a security problem with one of my VMs that wasn't supposed to be running, right? And this is especially nasty with lab systems, I've found, because corporate systems, a lot of you folks out there, you're IT corporate, you leave the lab guys alone. I'm going to suggest you don't do that. Make your identity system available to lab users and help them with it, because I would like to see, if I was laid off, if John fires me, oh wait, never mind. We're all here because we want to be. That even if you don't shut me down from the virtual machine simile, you start watching, you start logging changes, you start zooming in, you start seeing what this stuff can do, because it is really, really that time. If somebody's going to do something, they're going to do it then.
Yeah.
John, what do you think?
I think you make a great point, and we can all go with a very good assumption that the majority of people are not going to take action against the company that let them go or fired them. But there is a percentage of people that will. And even if that's 0.2%, 0.02%, that's a big number worldwide. And especially as much as we're seeing people just being disgruntled with corporate world in general these days, and the number of layoffs that are going on, that risk is going up. And I think that this is something that CISOs really need to be involved with, and to really start putting their policies out there and really pushing them, and figure out a way to be humane. And that, yes, you can send an email out, or you have some other access, but to protect the company or the organization, as it might be.
When I look at this, the problem is, you're right. The percentage of the people who are going to go and do this is low. The problem is you don't know which part of the percentage, which part in the cluster is going to happen, right? It's sometimes, yeah, it's a no-brainer. But the individual's hair is on fire and they're spitting sparks. Prepare for the worst. Although most of the time when you see that, you don't see anything bad happen on the information technology level anyway. But in a world where people are talking to you about zero trust networks, which is simply a further extension of NAC, really, when you get down to it, network access control and the ability to impose policy on a network, host, and server level is really, really important. The problem is, how do you justify the cost of this? That's how you do it.
Yeah, you know what, Lou Dog, that's a really good point. And we are already talking about one of our future deep dive series will be about zero trust networking. And that probably is the way you solve this, is that you get cut off from everything aside from your email capabilities. Everything else gets cut off. And that's something that zero trust could actually help with, is you just flip the rules. So that's all that you get. And then allow for a case where, well, there's a system that's going to, that I need access to, or I need to guide somebody access to. And then if I want to help the company out, make sure that something doesn't go down, I can work with them. But that's probably the most important thing, is that you use something like zero trust. And if you're not currently investigating zero trust, I would highly recommend that you do, because that's probably our savior here.
It really is. The other thing is, even the best of intentioned of employees, some people just snap and they start throwing logic bombs. The problem is your experience with offboarding a person, these employee, whatever, these are people, right? We're all people. When you're offboarding somebody, is that the offboard date doesn't start when you think it does. It doesn't start when you think that you just laid them off. It starts when the rumors went out. So when you have the shutdown, when you know who the people are and you know what services they had access to, every company has a rumor control network. We all have them, right?
100%. The last time it impacted me, I figured out a week and a half ahead of time that it was going to happen. And it was really unfortunate that that information got out. In my case, again, I wasn't super upset about it, but if I had been, I had a whole lot of time to be able to do bad things. And there was a lot of things I had access to that I could have really caused damage. So it was, good thing I was happy about the situation.
Myself as well, right?
Yeah.
Even though I had less warning, well, that's not true. I had a pretty good idea what was coming, but I was laughing about it, it's sad when you're actually comforting the people who are laying you off, but some days life is like that. Yeah. Some days life is like that. I don't want to cause undue pain. I don't have any bad feelings about it. And but yeah, in our case, hey, no problem, right? In fact, we actively worked to hand off as much as we could and keep things that we thought were important going. No problem. But here's the bad case, right? And this could have been a dead person at a restaurant. What does that lawsuit look like?
That's not good at all. Not good at all. And that's going to cover this week's episode. We couldn't do this podcast without listeners like you, and we would love to hear what you think, especially on that last topic on best ways to handle a very touchy, tricky situation where we want to, again, be humane to those that are in a bad situation, but also protect the corporate assets. Do you have another topic you want us to cover? Send us feedback at itsparkcast.com. That's feedback at itsparkcast.com or at IT SPARC Cast on X. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, turn on your notifications. That's really going to help this channel grow. Tell your friends, tell your colleagues, make sure that they're getting the same great information that we hope that we're providing to you. We'll be back on Wednesday with a deep dive and next Friday for more news and opinions in the world of enterprise IT. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for stopping by. See ya.